Hello friend, how are you? Welcome back to Change Your Life, and welcome to Ancient Coin World US today. We're diving into the fascinating world of American coin collecting, where an ordinary-looking 5-cent coin could carry an incredible history, a scarce variety, a minting mistake, or a condition that makes collectors stop and take notice. We're talking about the famous Jefferson nickel, featuring the iconic Monticello design, a coin that millions of people have handled without ever realizing that certain dates, mint marks, errors, varieties, and high-grade examples can become highly desirable collectibles. And today, we're beginning our countdown with coin number 1, the 1940 Jefferson nickel with no mint mark. At first glance, the 1940 Jefferson nickel may look like nothing more than an old 5-cent piece. You might find one sitting inside an old jar, tucked away in a family collection, hidden in a drawer, or mixed with other coins at a flea market. But when it comes to collecting, never judge an old coin simply by its face value. The date, mint mark, condition, surface quality, color, strike, and possible errors can make a huge difference. The Jefferson nickel was introduced in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel as America's 5-cent coin. The obverse features a portrait of Thomas Jefferson, one of the most important figures in American history. Turn the coin over and you'll see one of the most recognizable buildings in American coinage, Monticello, Jefferson's historic Virginia home. The 1940 issue belongs to the early years of the Jefferson nickel series, which makes it particularly interesting to collectors who enjoy building complete date and mint mark collections. One important detail to check is the mint mark. If your 1940 Jefferson nickel does not have a mint mark, it was produced at the Philadelphia Mint. Philadelphia coins from this period traditionally carried no mint mark. Now here is where things become interesting. Not every 1940 Jefferson nickel is rare simply because it is old. Millions of Jefferson nickels were produced, so an ordinary circulated example may not be worth an enormous amount, but collectors look much deeper than age alone. They examine the coin's condition, strike quality, luster, surface marks, color, details around Monticello, and especially the steps beneath the building. Those steps can be extremely important. When collectors evaluate Jefferson nickels, they often pay close attention to the full steps designation. On high-quality coins, the individual steps of Monticello can remain sharply defined. On many circulated or weakly struck examples, those details become worn or incomplete. A sharply struck, exceptionally preserved coin can therefore attract much more attention than an ordinary example. So if you have a 1940 Jefferson nickel, don't immediately throw it into a spending pile. Take a close look. Start with the date, make sure it clearly reads 1940. Then check the area near Jefferson's portrait for the mint mark. If there is no mint mark, you're looking at the Philadelphia issue. Next, examine the coin under good lighting. Look carefully at Jefferson's hair and facial details. Check the lettering, examine the rim, turn the coin over and inspect Monticello. Look closely at the columns, windows, and especially the steps. You should also pay attention to the coin's overall color. Older Jefferson nickels can develop different shades over decades of storage and circulation. Some may appear gray, dark, brownish, golden, or even slightly reddish because of environmental exposure and surface tunning. But remember, unusual color does not automatically mean the coin is rare or valuable. Collectors generally want originality and attractive, natural surfaces rather than damage caused by cleaning or chemicals. And that brings us to one of the biggest mistakes beginners make. Never assume a dirty old coin is automatically worth a fortune. Many people see an old coin covered in dirt and immediately believe they have discovered $1 million treasure. In reality, cleaning can sometimes reduce a collectible coin's value. Scratches, harsh polishing, chemicals, and unnatural surfaces can permanently affect a coin's appearance and desirability. If you discover an old Jefferson nickel, it is usually better to preserve it in its original condition rather than aggressively clean it. Now let's talk about errors. A genuine mint error can make a normal-looking Jefferson nickel much more interesting to collectors. Possible errors can include unusual strikes, doubling, off-center strikes, die problems, or other manufacturing abnormalities. However, not every strange-looking mark is a mint error. Damage that happened after the coin left the mint can create scratches, dents, discoloration, or distorted lettering. That's why identification matters. A serious collector doesn't simply look at a coin and say, "This is rare." They compare the date, mint mark, design characteristics, condition, and possible variety against reliable references, and when necessary, professional authentication. Now imagine finding a 1940 Jefferson nickel that has survived more than 8 decades, with exceptionally sharp details. That is where the story becomes much more exciting. A coin that has spent decades in circulation may show scratches, flattened details, and heavy wear, but a coin that was carefully preserved could retain much of its original luster and detail. High-grade examples can become dramatically more desirable than ordinary circulated pieces. This is one of the most important lessons in coin collecting. The date alone doesn't determine the value. The combination of date plus mint mark plus condition plus strike plus variety plus authenticity is what creates the real collecting story. And this is exactly why you should always inspect old nickels before spending them. Maybe you won't find $1 million coin, maybe you won't find a record-breaking specimen, but you could discover a coin with a valuable variety, a scarce era, exceptional preservation, or simply an important place in American numismatic history. The 1940 Jefferson nickel is especially fascinating because it comes from an important period in the development of the series. It represents the early Jefferson nickel design that collectors have been studying for generations. And remember, this is only coin number 1 in our list. We still have more Jefferson nickels to explore, including other dates and mint marks that collectors watch closely. So before you spend an old nickel, stop for a moment. Look at the date. Look for the mint mark. Check Jefferson. Turn it over. Inspect Monticello. Look at those steps. And examine the surface carefully. Because sometimes the difference between an ordinary 5-cent coin and a collectible treasure is hiding in details that most people never notice. If you enjoy discovering rare American coins, valuable nickels, unusual mint eras, old pennies, quarters, and hidden treasures from U.S. coin history, make sure you stay with Ancient Coin World US. And don't forget, coin collecting isn't just about money. It's about history. It's about craftsmanship. It's about discovering something that survived from another generation. And sometimes it's about finding something special when everyone else thought it was just an ordinary coin. So take another look at that old 1940 Jefferson nickel. You might be looking at more than 5 cents. Stay tuned because our next Jefferson nickel could have an even more interesting story. This is Ancient Coin World US, where ordinary coins can reveal extraordinary history. First coin, welcome back to Change Your Life, and welcome to Ancient Coin World US today. We are diving deep into the fascinating world of American coin collecting, where a simple 5-cent coin can carry more history than most people ever imagine. Our focus today is one of the classic early Jefferson nickels, the 1940 Jefferson nickel with no mint mark, featuring the famous Monticello design. Before we go any further, there is one very important fact every collector should know. The regular 1940 Jefferson nickel is not a silver coin. It was made from the standard copper-nickel composition used for Jefferson nickels at that time. The special silver or war nickel, Jefferson nickels, came later, from 1942 through 1945. So if you have a 1940 nickel, don't assume it contains silver just because it looks old, dark, or shiny. Its potential collectible value comes from its date, condition, strike, varieties, eras, and overall preservation, not from silver content. Now let's take a closer look at the 1940 Jefferson nickel, no mint mark. At first glance, this coin may look like an ordinary 5-cent piece. It carries the familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and Monticello, Jefferson's Virginia home, on the reverse. But this coin belongs to the early years of the Jefferson nickel series, which began in 1938. That makes the 1940 issue an interesting piece of American numismatic history. If you find a 1940 Jefferson nickel without a mint mark, the absence of a mint mark is not automatically an error. For this issue, a missing mint mark generally indicates that the coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, where coins traditionally carried no mint mark during this period. This is one of the first things you should check when examining an old Jefferson nickel. Look at the date. Does it clearly say 1940? Then turn the coin over and inspect the area around Monticello. Look for a mint mark. If there is no mint mark, you may have the Philadelphia issue. But here's where the real story begins. A coin's value is not determined simply by how old it is. There is a common belief among new collectors that any coin from the 1940s must automatically be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. That's not how the coin market works. Many 1940 Jefferson nickels were produced, and circulated examples can still be relatively affordable. However, condition can completely change the collecting interest. Imagine two 1940 Jefferson nickels sitting side by side. The first coin has been in circulation for decades. It has scratches, dirt, flattened details, worn lettering, and damage around the rim. The second coin has sharp details, attractive original surfaces, strong luster, and very little evidence of circulation. Even though both coins have the same date and mint designation, collectors may value them very differently. This is why condition is one of the most important subjects in coin collecting. Let's talk about damage, because this is where many people make mistakes. If your 1940 Jefferson nickel is scratched, polished, heavily cleaned, bent, stained, gouged, or damaged by chemicals, its collectible value can be significantly reduced. A coin may still be historically interesting, but collectors generally prefer coins with original, undisturbed surfaces. For example, if someone takes an old nickel and aggressively scrubs it until it becomes bright and shiny, they may believe they have improved the coin. In reality, harsh cleaning can leave visible scratches and unnatural surfaces that collectors do not want. So if you discover an old 1940 Jefferson nickel, don't immediately clean it. Don't polish it. Don't scrape it. Don't use household chemicals. Preserve it exactly as you found it until you know what you have. Now let's move to one of the most fascinating features of Jefferson nickels, the Monticello steps. On the reverse of the coin, beneath the Monticello building, there are steps. On well-struck, high-grade Jefferson nickels, these steps can be extremely sharp and clearly separated. On worn or weakly struck coins, those details may disappear. Collectors pay close attention to the quality of these steps, especially when evaluating high-grade examples. So take your 1940 nickel and look at Monticello under bright light or magnification. Can you clearly see the individual steps? Are they sharp? Are they complete? Or have they become flat and worn? The answers can tell you a lot about the coin's condition. Another thing to examine is the overall strike. Some coins were struck more sharply than others. A strong strike can preserve small design details that are missing on weaker examples. This can become especially important when comparing coins in higher grades. Now let's talk about rarity. Is the 1940 Philadelphia Jefferson nickel rare? An ordinary circulated 1940 no-mint mark nickel is not considered an extreme rarity simply because it is from 1940. There are surviving examples, and collectors can generally find circulated pieces without extraordinary difficulty. But rarity is not always black and white. There is a huge difference between an ordinary circulated coin and an exceptionally preserved coin. The number of surviving examples in very high grades can be much smaller than the original production numbers. As coins spend decades in circulation, they become scratched, worn, stained, and damaged. Only a small percentage may survive with exceptional preservation. That is why condition rarity can be extremely important. A coin that looks ordinary to a casual observer may become much more interesting when it reaches an unusually high certified grade. And this brings us to the subject everyone wants to know about. How much could a 1940 Jefferson nickel be worth? The answer depends heavily on condition. A heavily circulated or damaged 1940 no-mint mark Jefferson nickel may be worth only a modest premium over face value, and some examples may trade for relatively little depending on their condition and the market. A nicer circulated example can be worth more to collectors. An attractive uncirculated specimen can bring a significantly higher price. And an exceptionally high-grade example with strong details, excellent surfaces, and desirable characteristics can potentially command much more than an ordinary example. In the collector market, high-grade coins can sometimes sell for tens, hundreds, or even substantially more depending on the exact grade, strike, variety, certification, and buyer demand. But you should never assume that every 1940 nickel is worth thousands of dollars. The highest prices belong to exceptional examples, not ordinary damaged coins. This distinction is extremely important for anyone watching coin value videos online. You may see sensational headlines claiming that an old nickel is worth $10,000, $50,000, or even millions of dollars. Don't automatically believe those claims. Always ask, what exact coin was sold? What was its grade? Was it certified? Was there a recognized variety or error? Was the coin damaged or problem-free? And most importantly, was that amount an actual auction sale price? A genuine auction record is much more meaningful than an internet estimate or an unrealistic asking price. Now let's examine possible errors and varieties. If your 1940 Jefferson nickel looks unusual, don't immediately assume it is valuable. Some unusual marks are caused by circulation damage, environmental exposure, scratches, dents, or post-mint alterations. A genuine mint error happens during the manufacturing process. Examples of legitimate minting abnormalities can include unusual strikes, die-related problems, off-center strikes, or other recognized errors. But proving that an unusual feature is actually a mint error can require experience and sometimes professional examination. So if your 1940 nickel has something strange about it, take clear photographs and compare it with trusted numismatic references before deciding that you have discovered a major rarity. Now let's talk about color and tunning. An old Jefferson nickel may develop gray, brown, golden, or other shades as it ages. Natural tunning can sometimes make a coin visually attractive and interesting to collectors. But strange color alone does not make a coin rare. In fact, chemical exposure, cleaning, corrosion, or environmental damage can also change the color of a nickel. So don't confuse unusual appearance with genuine rarity. The best approach is to look at the complete picture: date, mint mark, strike, condition, surfaces, tunning, possible varieties, and authenticity. Now imagine finding your 1940 Jefferson nickel inside an old collection. Maybe it belonged to a parent or grandparent. Maybe it was sitting in an old coin album for decades. Maybe you discovered it in a jar of coins. That is what makes coin collecting so exciting. You don't always know the story behind a coin. This little 5-cent piece could have traveled through American history for more than 80 years. It may have been carried in someone's pocket during a completely different era. It may have passed through stores, banks, homes, and collections before finally reaching you. And that's why even a coin worth only a small amount financially can still be priceless from a historical perspective. But if you're looking for market value, condition is still king. Check the rims. Check Jefferson's portrait. Check the lettering. Check Monticello. Check the steps. Look for scratches and cleaning. Look for unusual die characteristics. And check whether the surfaces appear original. If your coin appears exceptionally well preserved, that's when you may want to consider having it examined by an experienced coin dealer or professional grading service. Professional certification can be especially useful for potentially valuable high-grade coins because it verifies the coin's authenticity and assigns a standardized grade. However, don't send every ordinary 5-cent coin for expensive grading. Certification fees can cost more than the value of a common circulated nickel. The smartest collectors learn to identify promising coins first. So here's the big takeaway. If you have a 1940 Jefferson nickel with no mint mark, don't automatically think you found a silver coin or $1 million treasure. But don't throw it away either. It is an early Jefferson nickel with genuine historical importance, and its value can increase when you have exceptional condition, strong strike quality, attractive original surfaces, a recognized variety, or a legitimate mint error. A damaged example may have limited market value. A normal circulated example may be modestly collectible. A beautiful uncirculated example can be much more desirable. And an extraordinary, high-grade, professionally authenticated example can potentially reach a completely different level of the market. So before you spend that old nickel, stop. Take a second look. Check the 1940 date. Check for the no mint mark. Examine Jefferson. Turn the coin over. Study Monticello. Look closely at the steps. Inspect the surfaces for damage. And if something looks unusual, investigate it before making a decision. Because sometimes the most exciting discoveries don't come from rare-looking coins. They come from coins that look completely ordinary at first. This has been Ancient Coin World US, where we explore American coins, hidden treasures, rare dates, mint marks, errors, varieties, and the fascinating stories behind the coins that may still be sitting in your pocket, drawer, collection, or old family box. If you enjoyed today's journey into the 1940 Jefferson nickel, make sure you stay with us, because we are continuing our search for America's most interesting and valuable coins. And remember, never judge an old coin by its face value. That 5-cent piece in your hand may not make you rich, but it could tell a story that is worth far more than 5 cents. Keep searching, keep learning, and always check your change. Because you never know what history is hiding in your hands. Next up. Second coin. Welcome back to Change Your Life, and welcome back to Ancient Coin World US today. We are diving deep into the fascinating world of American coin collecting, where an ordinary-looking 5-cent coin can sometimes hide an extraordinary story. Today, we are focusing on a very interesting Jefferson nickel, the 1964 Jefferson nickel with no mint mark, featuring the famous Monticello design. This is a coin that millions of people may have seen, touched, saved, or even spent without realizing that certain examples can become highly desirable to collectors. But before we talk about rarity and market value, there is something extremely important you need to know. The regular 1964 Jefferson nickel is not a silver coin. Yes, you heard that correctly. The standard 1964 Jefferson nickel was made from approximately 75% copper and 25% nickel, not silver. The famous silver content Jefferson nickels were the wartime issues struck from 1942 through 1945. So if you have a 1964 nickel, don't assume that its value comes from silver. Its potential collectible value comes from something else: its condition, strike quality, varieties, errors, full steps, surfaces, and overall preservation. And that is where today's story becomes very interesting. So if you have an old 1964 Jefferson nickel sitting in a drawer, coin jar, collection, or even your pocket, don't spend it before you watch this entire video. Because we're going to look at what makes the 1964 no mint mark Jefferson nickel interesting, how damage affects its value, what collectors look for on Monticello, and how an exceptional example can be worth dramatically more than its 5-cent face value. Let's begin. The Jefferson nickel was introduced in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel. The coin features a portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse, while the reverse displays Jefferson's famous home, Monticello. The design was created by Felix Schlag, and it quickly became one of America's most recognizable circulating coins. By 1964, the United States was experiencing enormous demand for coins. The country was dealing with coin shortages, and the mint dramatically increased production. The Philadelphia Mint struck more than 1 billion 1964 Jefferson nickels. PCGS records the Philadelphia issue at approximately 1.024 billion pieces. That number is incredibly important, because it means an ordinary 1964 Jefferson nickel with no mint mark is not automatically rare. If someone tells you that every 1964 nickel with no mint mark is worth thousands of dollars simply because it has no mint mark, be very careful. No mint mark on a 1964 Jefferson nickel generally means the coin was produced at Philadelphia. That absence of a mint mark is normal for the Philadelphia issue. So where does the potential value come from? The answer is condition. Imagine you have two 1964 Jefferson nickels. Both have the same date. Both have no mint mark. Both are authentic. But one coin has spent decades circulating through stores, vending machines, pockets, and cash registers. Its portrait is worn, its rim has marks, the fields are scratched, Monticello is weak, and the steps are almost completely worn away. The other coin has been carefully preserved since the day it left the mint. Its surfaces are bright and original. Jefferson's portrait is sharp, the lettering is crisp, Monticello is strongly struck, and the steps underneath Monticello are unusually complete. These two coins may look similar to a beginner, but to an experienced collector, they can be completely different coins from a value perspective. This is why coin collectors don't simply ask, "What year is it?" They ask, "What year is it? What mint produced it? What condition is it in? And what special characteristics does it have?" Now let's talk about damage. Damage is one of the biggest factors that can reduce the collectible value of an old Jefferson nickel. If your 1964 nickel has deep scratches, dents, gouges, corrosion, harsh cleaning, polishing, or chemical damage, collectors may consider it a problem coin. And this is extremely important. If you find a dirty 1964 Jefferson nickel, don't automatically clean it. Do not polish it with a cloth. Do not use metal polish. Do not use strong chemicals. Do not scrape the surface. You might think you're making the coin look better, but you could actually make it less desirable to serious collectors. Original surfaces are extremely important. A naturally aged coin can be far more interesting than a coin that has been aggressively cleaned. Now turn the coin over. This is where one of the most important areas of the Jefferson nickel appears. Look at Monticello. And then look underneath Monticello. Look at the steps. These steps can make a huge difference when evaluating a high-grade Jefferson nickel. Collectors often use the term full steps, or FS, for coins where the steps on Monticello are sharply and completely defined. Why does this matter? Because many Jefferson nickels were not struck strongly enough to preserve all of the tiny details in this area. Even coins that appear beautiful at first glance can have weakness on the steps. That's why a collector may take a magnifying glass or loupe and carefully inspect the reverse. They're not just looking at whether the building is visible. They're looking at how sharply the details were struck. Can you see the individual steps? Are the lines complete? Are there interruptions? Are there contact marks running across them? Are the steps weak because of the strike? Or are they genuinely sharp and complete? This tiny area can separate an ordinary example from a much more desirable high-grade coin. Now let's discuss the 1964 Philadelphia market. Because more than 1 billion were struck, most circulated examples are not going to be rare treasures. A heavily worn example with damage may be worth only a small amount above face value, if any significant premium exists. A nicer circulated coin may have some collector interest. An uncirculated example can be worth more. And an exceptionally high-grade coin with strong surfaces and full steps can be worth dramatically more. PCGS lists an auction record of $14,100 for a 1964 Philadelphia Jefferson nickel in a high-grade example. That does not mean your ordinary 1964 nickel is worth $14,100. It demonstrates how dramatically value can change when an example is exceptionally preserved and reaches the highest levels of the grading scale. This is one of the most important lessons in coin collecting. Auction records are not the same thing as normal values. If you see a headline saying, 1964 nickel worth $14,000, don't assume every 1964 nickel is worth thousands. The actual coin that achieved that price had to meet specific quality and grading characteristics. Your coin might be circulated. It might be scratched. It might be cleaned. It might have weak steps. It might have environmental damage. Or it might simply be an ordinary example. That's why identifying the exact condition is so important. Now let's talk about color and appearance. You may discover a 1964 nickel that looks dark. Another might look gray. Another might have golden or brownish toning. Another may look unusually bright. Don't automatically assume that unusual color means rarity. Color can result from natural toning, environmental exposure, storage conditions, chemical reactions, or cleaning. A beautiful natural appearance can sometimes be desirable, but artificial coloring or damage is a completely different story. Collectors want to know what happened to the coin's surface. Was it naturally preserved? Was it cleaned? Was it exposed to chemicals? Was it stored improperly? These questions can make a major difference. Now let's talk about mint errors and varieties. A 1964 Jefferson nickel can become much more interesting if it has a genuine minting error or recognized variety. But here's another warning. Not every strange mark is an error. A scratch is not necessarily an error. A dent is not necessarily an error. A damaged letter is not necessarily an error. A strange-looking edge does not automatically mean the coin is rare. A true mint error must have a logical connection to the manufacturing process. That is why serious collectors compare unusual coins against known varieties and minting characteristics. If your coin has something unusual, take clear photographs and get a second opinion before believing an online claim that it is worth thousands. Now let's imagine you find a 1964 Jefferson nickel that looks almost perfect. The surfaces are bright. There are very few marks. Jefferson's portrait is sharp. The lettering is crisp. Monticello looks strong. And when you look closely, the steps appear unusually complete. Now you have something worth paying attention to. This is the kind of coin that may deserve a much closer examination. If the coin is truly exceptional, professional grading can become worth considering. A reputable grading service can authenticate the coin, evaluate its condition, and place it in a protective holder with an assigned grade. But remember, grading isn't automatically profitable for every coin. If you have an ordinary circulated 1964 nickel worth only a small amount, spending significant money to have it graded may not make financial sense. The best candidates for professional grading are generally coins that appear unusually well preserved, have potentially valuable varieties or errors, or show characteristics that could place them into a highly desirable grade. Now let's return to the question everyone wants answered. How much is a 1964 Jefferson nickel with no mint mark worth? The honest answer is, it depends. A damaged, heavily circulated example may be worth little more than its face value. A normal circulated example can have modest collector value. A nice uncirculated example can be worth more. A high-grade full steps example can be worth significantly more. And an exceptional certified coin can reach prices that seem unbelievable compared with its original 5-cent denomination. That is the fascinating thing about coin collecting. The face value is only the beginning. A coin doesn't need to be made from silver or gold to become valuable. Sometimes the rarity is in the condition. Sometimes it's in the strike. Sometimes it's an error. Sometimes it's a variety. And sometimes it's simply an unusually well-preserved example of a common date. So if you're searching through old nickels, don't just look for old dates. Look for quality. Look for sharp details. Look for original surfaces. Look for full steps. Look for legitimate errors. And always compare your coin with reliable references before making a value claim. Now here's another fascinating part of the 1964 Jefferson nickel story. The United States Mint continued striking coins dated 1964 into the following year because of the enormous demand for coinage. The 1964 dated Jefferson nickel therefore exists in extraordinarily large numbers. This explains something that confuses many new collectors. How can a coin with more than 1 billion produced possibly have valuable examples? The answer is simple. Population is not the same as high-grade population. Millions of coins may survive, but far fewer may survive in extraordinary condition. Think about it. A coin can survive for 60 years, but surviving isn't the same as surviving perfectly. Most coins experience contact with other coins. They get dropped. They are carried in pockets. They are stored incorrectly. They develop scratches. They lose luster. They become worn. And eventually, only a small percentage may remain in exceptional condition. That's why top-grade collectors compete for the finest examples. And that's where the real market can become exciting. So if you have a 1964 Jefferson nickel with no mint mark, here's exactly what I want you to do. First, don't clean it. Second, verify the date. Third, confirm that there is no mint mark. Fourth, inspect Jefferson's portrait. Fifth, examine the reverse. Sixth, look closely at Monticello. Seventh, inspect the steps. Eighth, check for scratches, dents, corrosion, and cleaning. Ninth, look for unusual minting characteristics. And finally, if the coin appears exceptionally preserved or genuinely unusual, consider having it examined by a knowledgeable coin professional. Don't rely on one random online price. Don't rely on an inflated auction listing. And don't assume an asking price is the same as a confirmed sale. Real market value is based on what buyers are actually willing to pay for a specific coin in a specific condition. This is especially important when watching videos about rare coins. You may hear someone say, "This coin is worth $10,000. But the real question is, which coin? What grade? What variety? What era? What certification? What auction? And what was the actual final sale price?" That's how a serious collector thinks. Now let's look one final time at our coin. The 1964 Jefferson nickel with no mint mark. It is not a silver coin. It is not automatically rare. It was produced in enormous numbers. But that doesn't mean you should ignore it. A beautiful, sharply struck, high-grade example can be much more interesting than an ordinary circulated piece. And if you discover an unusual variety or genuine mint error, the story can become even more exciting. So the next time you see an old Jefferson nickel, don't immediately throw it into your spending pile. Turn it over. Look at Monticello. Look at those steps. Check the surfaces. Check the date. And take your time. Because coin collecting is not about looking at a coin for 2 seconds and deciding its value. It's about learning how to see the details that everyone else overlooks. And that is exactly what makes this hobby so exciting. One small 5-cent coin can connect you to American history, minting technology, collecting culture, and decades of stories. Maybe your 1964 nickel is worth only a few cents. Maybe it's worth a modest premium. Maybe it's a beautiful, uncirculated example. Or maybe, just maybe, you've discovered something unusual that deserves professional attention. You won't know until you look. So before you spend that old 1964 Jefferson nickel, check it carefully. Check the date. Check the no mint mark Philadelphia issue. Check for damage. Check the surfaces. Check Monticello. And most importantly, check those steps. Because sometimes the smallest details can make the biggest difference. Thank you for watching Ancient Coin World US. If you enjoy discovering rare American coins, valuable Jefferson nickels, Lincoln pennies, Washington quarters, mint errors, unusual varieties, and hidden treasures, make sure you stay connected with the channel. Keep searching. Keep learning. Keep checking your change. And never assume that an old coin is worthless just because it says 5 cents. Because sometimes the real treasure isn't what the coin says on its face. The real treasure is the story hidden inside it. This is Ancient Coin World US. And I'll see you in the next coin hunting adventure. Next up. Third coin, welcome back to Change Your Life, and welcome back to Ancient Coin World US. Today we are diving deep into the fascinating world of American coin collecting, and this time we have a Jefferson nickel that looks ordinary at first glance, but when you examine the date, mint mark, condition, strike, and especially the details on Monticello, the story becomes much more exciting. Our coin today is the 1969 D Jefferson nickel. That's right, the 1969 Jefferson nickel struck at the Denver Mint. And if you have one of these coins sitting in an old collection, coin jar, drawer, or box, I want you to take a closer look before you spend it. Because while most 1969 D Jefferson nickels are not rare in circulated condition, there is one characteristic that can make this date incredibly interesting to advanced collectors. That characteristic is called full steps, or FS. And when we talk about a 1969 D Jefferson nickel with extraordinary full steps, we enter a completely different part of the coin market. But first, let's clear up one very important misunderstanding. The regular 1969 D Jefferson nickel is not a silver coin. It is made from the standard copper-nickel composition used for Jefferson nickels during this period, approximately 75% copper and 25% nickel, So if your 1969 D nickel looks silver-colored, that does not mean it contains silver. The coin's potential value comes from its numismatic characteristics, not from silver content. Now let's go back to 1969. The United States was going through an important period in its coinage history. The mint was producing enormous quantities of circulating coins, and the Jefferson nickel was an important part of everyday American commerce. The Denver Mint struck approximately 202,807,519.69 D Jefferson nickels. That is more than 200 million coins. So let's immediately answer one question. Is every 1969 D Jefferson nickel rare? No. An ordinary circulated 1969 D Jefferson nickel is generally common enough that you should not expect to become rich simply because you found one. But coin collecting has a fascinating rule. A coin can be common overall and still be extremely rare in exceptional condition. And the 1969 D Jefferson nickel is a perfect example. Let's imagine that you find two 1969 D nickels. The first one has been circulating for decades. It has scratches. It has contact marks. The rims are worn. Jefferson's portrait is no longer sharp. The lettering shows wear. And when you turn the coin over, Monticello's steps are weak and partially worn away. The second coin is completely different. It has bright original surfaces. The portrait of Jefferson is sharply defined. The lettering is crisp. There are very few contact marks. The coin has strong luster. And when you look beneath Monticello, you can see unusually sharp and complete steps. To someone who doesn't collect coins, these two nickels might both look like 5-cent pieces. To an experienced Jefferson nickel collector, they can represent two completely different levels of desirability. This is where condition becomes extremely important. Now let's talk about damage. If your 1969 D Jefferson nickel has heavy scratches, dents, gouges, corrosion, harsh cleaning, polishing, or other post-mint damage, its value can be significantly reduced. And this is one of the most important warnings I can give you. Do not clean your old Jefferson nickel. Don't polish it. Don't use metal cleaner. Don't rub it aggressively. Don't scrape dirt from the surface. And don't use chemicals to make the coin look brighter. Why? Because collectors care about original surfaces. A coin that looks dark or dirty may still have original surfaces. A coin that has been aggressively polished may look bright, but those scratches and unnatural surfaces can permanently reduce its collectible desirability. So if you find a 1969 D nickel that looks old and dirty, leave it alone until you know what you have. Now let's turn the coin over. Look at the reverse. You will see the famous Monticello building. And underneath it you will find the steps. This is where the 1969 D Jefferson nickel becomes especially fascinating. The steps are tiny details, but they can have a huge impact on the value of a high-grade Jefferson nickel. Collectors look for full steps. A full steps Jefferson nickel has exceptionally complete and uninterrupted detail across the steps of Monticello. But finding a 1969 D with genuinely complete full steps is extremely difficult. And this isn't simply because collectors don't look hard enough. It has to do with the way these coins were produced and the quality of the dies used during this period. The 1969 D issue is known for strike weakness and numerous marks. NGC specifically notes that 5 FS examples are extremely rare and that 6 FS examples may not exist. PCGS goes even further. According to PCGS, the 1969 D full steps nickel is an extreme rarity, with only a single example having earned the full steps designation at PCGS in the reference population information. That is an incredible difference. More than 200 million coins were struck. But an exceptionally sharp full steps example can be extraordinarily difficult to find. This is what collectors call a conditional rarity. The date itself isn't necessarily rare. The rare part is finding that date in an exceptionally high-quality condition with the right strike characteristics. And this is why you should never judge a 1969 D. Jefferson nickel simply by its date. You have to examine the entire coin. Now let's talk about the market value. This is where things become very interesting. According to NGC's current guide, ordinary circulated 1969 D. Jefferson nickels can have very modest values, around the face value range, while pristine uncirculated examples can command substantially higher prices. NGC lists an open market figure reaching around $180 for particularly pristine examples in its guide. But remember, price guides are not guarantees. A coin's actual selling price depends on grade, eye appeal, certification, demand, and the exact characteristics of that individual coin. And then we have the extraordinary full steps examples. PCGS records an auction result of $33,600 for a 1969 D. Jefferson nickel graded MS65FS, sold by Stack's Bowers in August 2021. Now stop for a moment and think about that. We're talking about a coin with a face value of only 5 cents. A coin that was originally designed for everyday commerce. A coin that was produced in quantities exceeding 200 million. And yet, an exceptional example with the right grade and full steps characteristic reached $33,600 at auction. This does not mean your ordinary 1969 D nickel is worth $33,600. That's extremely important. The $33,600 result belongs to a specific certified coin with an extraordinary grade and full steps designation. A scratched, circulated, damaged 1969 D nickel is a completely different situation. This is why you should never take a record auction price and apply it to every coin of the same date. The grade matters. The strike matters. The surfaces matter. The full steps designation matters. And authentication matters. Now let's examine the obverse. Start with Jefferson's portrait. Look at his hair. Look at his cheek. Look at the jawline. Look at the lettering around the portrait. Then inspect the fields. Are there lots of scratches? Are there contact marks? Does the coin have dull surfaces? Or does it still show attractive original luster? If the coin has been heavily circulated, the details will naturally become softer. But if it has never circulated, the original mint luster may still be visible. That is the difference between a circulated coin and an uncirculated coin. Now turn it over again. Look at Monticello. Look at the columns. Look at the windows. And most importantly, look at those steps. This is where I want you to slow down. Use good lighting. If possible, use a magnifying glass or a coin loop. Do not assume that seeing lines means you have full steps. The steps need to be complete and uninterrupted according to the grading standards used for the designation. Even a small mark crossing the steps can prevent a coin from qualifying. And this is exactly why full steps examples are so difficult. The coin can look beautiful overall, but if the steps are weak, the coin may not receive the coveted FS designation. Now let's talk about damage versus mint error. This is another area where beginners often get confused. Suppose you find a strange line across your 1969 D nickel. You might think you've discovered a rare mint error. But that line could simply be a scratch created after the coin left the mint. Maybe the coin hit another object. Maybe it was dropped. Maybe someone carried it in a pocket with keys. Maybe someone tried to clean it. These are not necessarily mint errors. A genuine mint error occurs during the manufacturing process. That's why unusual features should be examined carefully. If you think your 1969 D nickel has a genuine error, don't immediately believe an internet claim saying it is worth thousands of dollars. Take clear photographs. Compare it with known examples. And if the coin appears valuable, get an opinion from a qualified numismatist or professional grading service. Now let's discuss color. You might find a 1969 D nickel with a dark gray appearance. Another may have golden or brownish tunning. Another might look unusually bright. Color by itself does not make the coin rare. Natural tunning can happen over decades of storage. Environmental exposure can also change a coin's appearance. Chemical damage can change the color. Cleaning can create unnatural surfaces. So don't confuse unusual color with rarity. The most important thing is the complete condition of the coin. Now here's something else that makes the 1969 D Jefferson nickel fascinating. The coin's extreme full steps rarity is connected to the quality of the strike and the dies used during this era. PCGS explains that the old master hub had been used for decades, and the loss of detail contributed to weak definition in intricate areas such as Monticello's steps. This is why the full steps feature is so important. It's not just a matter of whether the coin is shiny. It's about whether the mint successfully transferred the tiny design details onto the planchet. And that makes the 1969 D a fascinating study for collectors. Now imagine finding a 1969 D nickel in an old roll of coins. As you open the roll, one coin looks different. You put it under the light. The surface is brilliant. The details are sharp. You turn it over. Monticello is clearly visible. Then you notice something. The steps look unusually complete. Your heart starts beating faster. Could this be one of those rare full steps examples? This is exactly the kind of moment that makes coin hunting so addictive. But remember, excitement is not identification. You still need to verify the coin. You need to determine its condition. You need to examine the steps. And if it looks truly exceptional, professional authentication and grading may be worthwhile. Now let's discuss whether you should have your coin graded. If your 1969 D nickel is heavily worn, scratched, or damaged, professional grading probably won't make financial sense. But if the coin appears to be a high-grade, uncirculated example with exceptional surfaces and potentially complete full steps, then professional grading could be something to consider. A certified grade can provide buyers with more confidence. It can also make it easier to compare your coin with other high-grade examples. But never assume that grading automatically makes a coin valuable. The coin has to be valuable enough to justify the cost. Now let's summarize the value possibilities. If your 1969 D Jefferson nickel is heavily circulated and damaged, expect a very modest value. If it is a normal circulated example without anything unusual, it may still be collectible, but it is not automatically a high-dollar coin. If it is uncirculated with attractive surfaces, the value can rise. If it is a high-grade coin with excellent luster and strong details, collectors may show considerably more interest. And if it has genuinely exceptional full steps, you could be looking at a very different category of Jefferson nickel. The auction history proves that a PCGS MS65 FS 1969 D Jefferson nickel achieved $30,550 in 2016, and the same famous coin later reached $33,600 in 2021. Those are extraordinary results. But they also prove something important. The rare part isn't simply the date. The rare part is the combination of date, mint mark, grade, strike, and full steps. That is the real story of the 1969 D Jefferson nickel. So if you have one, don't throw it away. Don't clean it. Don't polish it. Don't assume it is worthless. But also don't assume it is automatically worth $33,600. Inspect it carefully. Check the date. Find the D mint mark. Examine Jefferson's portrait. Inspect the fields. Look for damage. Turn the coin over. Study Monticello. And carefully examine the steps. If the coin has strong luster and extremely sharp details, set it aside for further examination. Because you could have a high-grade example. And if those steps are exceptionally complete, you may have something that deserves serious attention from a Jefferson nickel specialist. This is what makes coin collecting so exciting. Sometimes rarity isn't about how many coins were originally made. Sometimes rarity is about how many survived in extraordinary condition. Millions of people may have handled these coins. Millions may have spent them. Millions may have disappeared into circulation. But finding an example with extraordinary preservation and full steps can be a completely different challenge. So the next time you see a 1969 D. Jefferson nickel, don't look at it as just 5 cents. Look at it as a piece of American history. Look at the craftsmanship. Look at the strike. Look at the surfaces. Look at Monticello. And look at those tiny steps. Because sometimes the smallest details can create the biggest difference in the collector market. Before you spend your old Jefferson nickel, check it carefully. You might not have a $33,600 coin. Most people won't. But you could have an attractive collectible, an unusually high-grade example, or a coin with characteristics worth investigating. And that's exactly why checking your old coins is worth the effort. Thank you for joining us here at Ancient Coin World US. If you enjoy discovering rare American coins, valuable Jefferson nickels, Lincoln pennies, Washington quarters, mint errors, unusual varieties, and hidden treasures, make sure you stay connected with the channel. Keep searching. Keep learning. Keep checking your change. And remember, never judge a coin by its face value. Because sometimes, a 5-cent coin can carry a story worth thousands of dollars. This is Ancient Coin World US. And I'll see you in the next coin hunting adventure, next up.